Hey, Sander.
Hello, Joey. Nice to meet you and see you again. Well,
Yeah,
meet you. We've already met, but
yeah,
yeah.
but it's
Hi.
been a long, long time, so I can imagine why you think that.
Yes,
I think it's been over a couple of years, actually.
I think so. I was actually a while ago. I was searching my name on SoundCloud, and
Hmm.
then one of the first things that pop up is the audio recording of our interview back then. I think it was somewhere around 2017 because I kind of remember I was
17.
in my prior office. I think 2017 or 18, something like that. Long time.
Holy shit! Well,
Yeah.
a lot has happened definitely in between. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I didn't expect it to be so long. I thought it was like 3 years, maybe.
Could be.
Yeah, but yeah, since even the pandemic has been almost 3 years ago, time flies. It's crazy
It
how
definitely does. Yes.
crazy how the things go. So, how have you been since then?
Pretty good, actually. Um,
I think the
so,
last time we spoke, you kind of just got started with, yeah, in Dutch it's called the dance advocaat. In English, it's the dance lawyer, I guess.
I think that that's already a long time ago because I started the dance advocate in 2015.
Okay.
So it must have been past that. It
Oh
was
yeah.
basically something because I noticed that in the world of law and lawyers, there's a big gap between what's going on in the studio life
Hmm.
and as a DJ and party organizer myself, it's more easy to talk the same talk that creatives use instead of the typical lawyer talk. And I just try to bridge the gap. And that's why I started the Dance Advocate in 2015.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, from that point on, it really took off. I started my own company in 2017, and the newest venture is called Backstage Legal, and that
Hmm.
is a legal collective for lawyers and attorneys at law that are actually from the creative industry themselves. Meaning,
Okay.
so everybody is doing law, but they also have a career in the creative industry. So we got a guy who's also a rapper and a comedian, and
Really?
he used to be a radio DJ. We got a producer and a bass player from a quite famous Dutch band, who's still producing a lot of film music. We got a lawyer who was also a shareholder within an event company. He had a podcast studio, and he's also DJing now and then. And yeah, I'm still DJing as well.
Oh, nice. It's such a unique combination because you wouldn't necessarily put lawyers behind the decks. I would say like it's a weird image, you know.
Yeah, I know because lawyers used to have kind of a dull image,
Yeah.
and that's why this is quite unique. Is that I was able to find people that had the same passion for music and the creative industry as I have. And we're all entrepreneurs. So it's an office without employees.
Hmm.
And I really like the vibe within that. So if we want to do something together in regard of like a workshop or a partnership with a freelance platform, you roll it out, and it's not because you have to as an employee, but it's because you want to as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And that's really nice. So we're all independent, working together if it's necessary or if it's useful or if it's fun. But we each also do our own thing, and we can combine it with our work in the creative industry. So that's really nice. I'm really happy how it's going.
Yeah.
So it's called Backstage Legal, and yeah, it's already our uh, going into the second year.
Okay. So you started full in the pandemic.
Yes. Yeah, we started full in the pandemic. I recall our photo shoot was still kind of like in the beginning. We had a like photo and video shoot in empty clubs. So we had a part was shot in Club Air in Amsterdam,
Mm-hmm.
and some really cool pictures were shot in an empty Radion. Yeah, that was full in the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think especially at that point of time, everybody was on his own island, like literally and figuratively
Yeah.
sitting at home by themselves doing the work. And I always thought, what if I could connect people who are doing their own work? And part of our work is like reading and thinking and being in our own heads. What if I could combine forces and get everybody together with uh, who wants to a not be alone anymore and have other creative lawyer people around him, her, etc.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a good point. So, what is it that you exactly do for artists? Because I think for most people who are listening or watching right now, they've heard of lawyers. I think they have a maybe even a bad image for most people
Yeah.
because they're connected to bad things. Obviously, as in you no, but normally in most cases you only come in contact with lawyers if shit hits a fan, right?
Yeah, or on TV, like the or movies,
Exactly,
like the typical criminal lawyers
exactly.
at show news programs and that kind of stuff,
Mm.
and in media when a big drug lord or with homicide cases get caught, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I think that's why people might have a negative bias towards lawyers. Um, I think differently from that, but that's why I like what you're doing. As in, I was just looking at your website, um, and the way how you offer your product makes it much more digestible or something, like much more lighter than most people would have think, I guess.
yeah, but I think I have three things. Like my answer is like threefold. I didn't start my life as a lawyer. I started
Hmm.
my life, and especially my career in the music industry, as a 6-year-old kid making mixtapes of gabber music and music from TV. And then I started mixing CDs and like making year mixes. And then I started throwing parties. And then I started DJing more and more and more and more. And then I graduated from law school. And then I DJed more and more and more and more. And I DJed on events like Burning Man and Zwarte Cross and Familiar Forest. And then I became a lawyer.
Huh.
And I used to do a lot of stuff with art. I used to have my own fashion label, but that was all before I became a lawyer.
Mm.
Um, I think the second thing is, and that's what I've already mentioned in the beginning, if you speak the same language, it's easier to connect.
True.
I didn't like the old type of law myself. I didn't like the old school law firms. I didn't particularly like wearing a suit to work. I mean, I do like wearing suits, but you know, if you go like to a fancy party, a suit is a uniform. Just as police officers have a uniform, it serves a function.
Yeah.
And wearing a suit in the creative industry does not serve the function you want. It creates a distance
Hmm.
instead of, you know, wearing my normal clothes like now, like other people do.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe that's the best word to describe it. How people feel towards lawyers, as in how artists feel towards lawyers. It's
yeah,
distance.
I know, I
Yeah.
understand because a lot of them use very difficult language and they fail to explain it in practical terms. So, not even normal people language, but studio people language or stage people language or performance people language or,
Yeah.
you know, anything. So, and the third thing is I think that the knowledge of the law and what I think artists and performers or labels and managers, etc., should know to progress their career in that respect is it's always very dull and very difficult. It's written from the lawyer to the reader instead of the other way around. Like, what does the reader need to know my perspective, and what way of communication can I use
Yeah.
to have a maximum effect? And I think that little step is something that people forget if they're like if they went to law school without a purpose, or if they like got sucked into the more traditional um, type of lawyer
Yeah.
and law firm. And I wanted to do that differently because I used to work at those kind of law firms. No, wait, I used to work at law firms that were kind of like that. That's what I should say.
Yeah.
And that didn't feel right for me. And I noticed that a lot of my clients were also like a little bit hesitant to continue that relationship while they did not really felt heard or seen and had to pay quite high fees and didn't get the response they got. There was no like client onboarding. Nobody really thought about user experience, so to say. And that's why I started my own company. And
Yeah.
I've always been super interested. For example, if you get signed into like a new online web service, like how they treat you and how they walk you through the process and how they do everything in order to for you to use the services to the best of their abilities, but also to just give transparency and an understandable oversight of what's going on. And that's what I'd like to do different.
Yeah, and I think you are doing it different. As in, yeah, as I just mentioned, I was watching your website. It instantly feels different. It feels more modern, more, yeah, connective. As in, me as a creative, yeah, it didn't feel like a lawyer page to me. It felt like, oh, there's something valuable here to get. Let's see what it is.
That's a
Uh,
nice compliment. Thank you.
yeah, thanks. Oh, well, thanks. Happy to say it. What I also noticed is that you offer different types of packages, and
Yes.
um, one of them stood out to me, which I think is a great one. I'm not sure it happens more often in lawyer land, but like the subscription thing, is that something that happens more often, or?
It does happen now and then, but I use it for some clients. And as you said in the beginning, for most people, a lawyer comes into play when shit hits the fan.
Hmm.
And I would like to be the legal partner that helps you in the beginning to avoid any shit hitting any fan.
Yeah.
So if you have to fix stuff afterwards, it's usually under stress, emotions, and will probably cost you a little bit more because you have to fix something from the past. And you have to dive deep into what really happened, what were the agreements, who defaulted, what did you do about it. And if you can avoid that, um, I think that gives ease of mind. I think
Hmm.
that's an important thing, and it's easier to like kind of give a little nudge when something new happens.
Hmm.
So being a legal partner and having a subscription model in that regard is a way to prevent those issues from happening, because somebody can just call and say, "Hey, I'm kind of like doing this, if I'm thinking about that. Can you give me some direction?" And
Hmm.
that is before I have to look into deep dive into contracts. So it's
Yeah.
an easy way for me to say, well, no, just go ahead or think about this, or this is more like a business call
Yeah.
instead of a legal call. And yeah, I try to help in that way.
Hmm.
But not too many people use it because they still have the idea of I'm going to a lawyer if I need contracts, or I'm going to a lawyer if something happened.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I use it for some clients, and
What type of client would be the one who's interested in the subscription model? Like a more successful one who already is at the level where you do have to deal with labels or managers or.
yeah, I think well, yeah, I think if you are using your rights and signing contracts or going into collaborations or into new business plans or ventures, then it could be useful.
Mhm.
Um, and that all starts with getting the idea of what your rights are. So I have this mantra that if you are aware of your rights, you can sign smarter deals. If you sign smarter deals, you will have less risk and more income. Less risk and more income creates more freedom. More freedom is more creativity, and more creativity leads to more work.
Mhm.
That is a way how you can get into a positive spiral upwards. And so that starts in knowing what your rights are. So what I usually do at a first meeting with a client, I just get a big piece of paper and I start drawing. So who are the people and who are the companies you are working with? And then you'll see the connections, like the line between one and two, and then you see what rights are involved. And if you get an oversight of that, um, and there are multiple players in the game, then and there you can see the money streams, like follow the money where it goes to, and if you add it up, you can see whether it might be beneficial to have a different entity like a limited liability company or a besloten vennootschap or a BV in Dutch.
Yeah.
Um, but that you need an oversight for that, and to create that oversight and to check up whether actions you take or plans you have might affect the entire blueprint of your company, that might be a good idea to call.
Hmm.
But it can also be if you sign a lot of featuring deals, or if you sign track by track publishing deals with minor differences, and you just want to ask a quick question about it without me studying the entire contract, then it might be a good idea to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And would you say creative people are not necessarily the best when it comes down to defending their rights?
I know. I think the problem is not with defending the rights. Um, I think it starts with that awareness, and I do understand that if you want to create music or art or anything, that you do not like the paperwork part.
Hmm.
Like for me as a lawyer, I don't like to do the tax part, so I hire an accountant that's
Yeah.
really good and does my taxes. But I do want to understand it, because if I don't understand it, then I do not know if it's optimized, and I want to learn to understand it. So I want advice from my accountant whether to make my financial game smarter. And with a lot of artists, I see that they're not really interested in it, because like if you look at the underground, it's not so much done to get into the business part of music.
Hmm.
And on the other hand, I see people sometimes just want to save money, and I understand that. But if it's then not optimized, and it's more expensive to fix that afterwards, because you have to fix it all the way back, and you need to draft contracts that, if you would have done it from the beginning, were more easy
Yeah.
and cheaper. Um, but there luckily are also a lot of people who take this seriously and use this awareness and knowledge of rights to get into that positive spiral upwards, as I said. And it's also, I think, it's ease of mind. If you know that your contract game is solid, if you know that your, for example, cancellation terms for a gig are solid, if you know how to do invoicing and collection, if that's solid, then you know that if somebody doesn't pay you, you'll be probably on the winning end of it, and that is taking so much stress and negative emotions away.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it starts with the awareness, but yeah, you kind of need to like doing that. And also, so a while ago, I written an article for a really underground platform throwing illegal raves in Amsterdam, and we kind of had a discussion following that article about making money from your music. Um, and for me, it's okay if you make money from your music, even if you're in the underground and super obscure techno tunnel raves, for example, because you can buy merch from your favorite artist to support him or her or them. You can buy tracks via Bandcamp, or you can buy vinyl, or you can just go to a show, or just even gift somebody the money, or pay beer, or get some food. So how you spend the money is up to you. It's not that if you make it or make money from your music or your art, that you're trying to get into the DJ Mag Top 100 forever.
Yeah.
Um,
True.
so it's about how you do it, with what kind of intention. And
Hmm.
either way, I just like to help with optimizing the legal game, so you can basically do what you want to do. That's create cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Takes a lot of the load of
Yes.
stress in the whole process, and creativity gets crunched by stress. So makes sense.
Yeah. For me, as an entrepreneur or a company, it's nice to know whether what I'm doing is right, and if I have any risk in it, especially if other people get involved or money gets involved. And I just
Yeah.
want to know that it's solid.
What are some of the most common things you see happen over and over again with artists? Mistakes that they've made, or lawsuits that keep coming up. Like there must be some kind of pattern in this.
Yeah, there are a lot of things, but I'll try to point out three. The first thing I say to so many of my clients, or if I give lectures at, from like ranging from universities to music educations, is if you get a percentage, your first question should be a percentage of what?
Mm-hmm.
The percentage is a part of something, so you need to determine what something is. So if you go to a shop and there's 30% discount, you usually get like 30% for what was on the original tag, right?
Hmm.
That's a starting point. That's quite easy. With music, it can be a little bit more difficult. You got the calculation basis of your royalty, so the part you get. This can be at source or as received. At source is basically what is made with your music, and as received is what the party gets that has to pay you your part. There can be a huge difference. So, for example, if you are an remix artist and you remix a track from an artist that is signed to a label, and the label has a distributor,
Hmm.
then, for example, Spotify pays out the distributor. The distributor, that's like 100. The distributor takes 20%, pays 80 to the label. The label has a deal with the artist that they split it, well, if you're lucky for digital, 50-50. So the artist gets 40. And
Yeah.
if you get 20% out of 40, like you're not getting so much money.
Yeah.
If you are getting 20% at source, that's a lot more because all those deductions don't
Yeah.
matter. Then the second thing is if you have determined what the source is, so at source or as received,
Hmm.
then you need to take care that you can control some of the costs. In a lot of contracts, I see that there is an unlimited cost deduction. This is probably not really legal right now in the Netherlands and most European countries.
Hmm.
I make a quick reference to the Martin Garrix case. They're still fighting about whether contract clauses were um, unreasonable or not.
Is that
But
still
probably
going on?
yes, it's still going on. So
Cool.
I'll get into that a little bit later. Remind me of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're talking about the cost deduction. So if you have to pay for everything that a label or the artist you made a remix for wants to do with your remix, artwork, video clips, etc., then all the risk is with you. You will probably have no master rights, and your royalty percentage will be reduced by all those things and all those fees that are taken off.
Yeah.
So that is one. I think two is that
No, that was
still.
two.
Sorry.
That was already two.
Yeah, that was already. I think that was already two. I think in the contracts, a lot of arguments there to push something through, like a clause, is because it's always been like this in the music industry.
Hmm.
That is not a valid argument. That's not a valid reason. You can always ask why something happens, and I think you should get a transparent and honest explanation. There can be like a good reason why you want to split risk or why you want to make a certain divide in monies.
Hmm.
But because it always happened like this, is not really a good argument because the law changes and we got new court cases, a new explanation. So in 2015, our law changed. In 2021 and 22, the EU laws also changed, stating that parties that get the rights, labels, but also distributors and sub-licensees, etc., they have to use your music. If they do not use it, you can get your rights back. And simply uploading it once is not seen as active exploitation, probably. So that is kind of new. They need to be transparent. So they need
Hmm.
to provide you relevant, accurate, and full information about what money came in and
Yeah.
what costs went out. And sometimes I just see like a one pager with, your track generated 1,000 euros. You can invoice us this, but you need to be able to check it.
Yeah.
And contracts cannot have unreasonable clauses anymore. So what they try to do is kind of balance the equilibrium between artists and the companies that are exploiting the rights of the artist. So I think that kind of changed, but the contracts didn't. So the contracts kind of stayed old school,
Hmm.
making the clauses not really up to date anymore and possibly even illegal. So this is a bad thing for the artist, but also, for example, a label, because if you use those illegal clauses or voidable clauses, you will get disgruntled artists, and if you're not transparent, your artist will maybe suspect that something's going on that you're not giving a transparent oversight of what money came in, that you're
Yeah.
keeping money behind, and if it ever goes to court, you'll both lose.
Yeah.
So I think there is an urge to change the contracts before the problems start, and um, that is something that I do not really see happening. The third thing is about master rights, and that's also what the Martin Garrix against Spinning Records case was about. It was the determination who is the phonogram producer, and in a lot of contracts, which just simply stated the label is the master owner. That's not necessarily true. What's important is who took the initiative and carried the responsibility for the recording, the first
Hmm.
recording. And if you look at the Garrix case, I think most producers, or at least a lot of producers, worked in the same way as Garrix did. He thought of animals on his bed. He played it in his home studio. He recorded it. He paid for mixing and mastering, and then sent it to the record label. So he was the guy who took the initiative and carried the responsibility for the recording. Spinning Records would have said, "We didn't like the record. We don't want it." Then all the risk would be with the artist. I
Yeah.
think that is how it happens in 99% of all cases. But what I do not see in our work yet, and I've spoken to this about fellow lawyers as well, we don't really see producers and artists like acting up again and using this Garrix case to get their master rights back. And again, every situation is different, but we would have expected so much more like traffic and action in this regard. It's like a sleeping giant.
But
One of my
does it mean that, let's say I have about, I don't know, 50 tracks signed in my life.
Mhm.
I'm guessing most of them I've signed away my rights because I was young. I had no idea. I just signed the contract, and the label is the rights owner at this point. Does that mean that by now I can go to them and say, "Hey, but I've been the person who took initiative of the record"?
Well, it like comes together in the whole spectrum of what happened in that case. So there was a lot more going on there. But if they're not actively exploiting your tracks,
So
that
that's
could be.
also in hindsight, as in the new law is also yeah, it does. It's also for all the deals that have been made before 2021.
Yeah. So yes, definitely before 2021.
Hmm.
This law in the Netherlands was 2015 already,
The
but
one, the one of um, if they don't exploit it,
yeah,
if they
those.
don't use it.
Yes, and actually, it was already in our law, and it's already in most legal systems that if you give somebody else an assignment to promote and exploit your music, and they don't, you can just send them a notice of default.
Hmm.
For as far as they can still fix it. If they don't fix it, you terminate the agreement. You get your rights back. And most
Hmm.
collective rights organizations also have a possibility for this.
That's good to know.
But now it's also in our copyright law, and it's made more specific. But there are at least three ways if somebody else doesn't use your music to get your rights back. Um, and this, because of like we were with the law change in 2015, we instated this, but last year, so 6 years later, this like kind of the same rules are EU legislation now as well. So it's like all member states need to comply with
Hmm.
it. But
And,
yeah,
and
it's an interesting way to possibly get your master rights back because well, in the Netherlands you get 50% of Sena income from it.
yeah, and when
Um,
you say the label has to use your track, do you mean like license it out to gaming or to TV or whatever?
yeah, or at least try. They need to actively do something with it. If they, I think even an in-house compilation could count as such.
Yeah,
That's why I'm always a little bit wary that in contracts, you need to be really clear if that is exploitation and if that's their main game plan.
yeah.
But yeah, just simply uploading it on SoundCloud and all portals, and even if you do that by distributors, so they actually don't do it themselves,
Hmm.
and just leave it there. That's probably like most probably not active exploitation. There are not any court cases about this subject yet, but like all things point toward that
Yeah.
standpoint. Yeah.
And what if the label released your song 2 years ago, actively pushed it at back then,
Yeah,
and now 2 years later, they've kind of let it go for like 1.5 years?
yeah. I mean, that is a kind of a short term, but if you have the feeling that there are possibilities and they're not doing it, they're not using their, well, if it's an exclusive right, for example, they're not using their exclusive right, and you do see possibilities, then you could send them a notice. And I think 1 year, 1.5 year,
Let's say
is
5 years.
5 years definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, they cannot really fix it for the past, but if it's been going on for a really long time, um, or for example, the same goes with publishing rights. If you see sometimes that a publisher and a record label are connected, and if the record label is releasing the track, this is not the activity of the publisher anymore,
Yeah.
because publishing is about the copyright, about what I always say is the theory of the music. It's a song before it's sung. It's a tune before it's played. It's like on paper or in your computer, the composition or lyrics.
Hmm.
So the theory, as soon as you start to perform it and to record it, that's what we can hear. That's what we understand from music. Those are other rights. So those are neighboring rights, and those are the rights that you sign away to a label, for example, and um, that's what we can hear, what we can sell.
Mm.
And a copyright, yeah, that also needs active exploitation. Could be in syncs, could be in sheet music. You don't see that really happening with electronic music, but
No.
could still happen. But those are syncs and all kind of other collaborations, remixes, etc.
Wow. I didn't notice like that the new law kicked in, and nobody really
I know.
communicated it. Maybe Buma Stemra did. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah, I think a lot of people did write about it because this was really something new,
yeah.
and it really, there was an online questionnaire for artists and for people who had a stake in this, and but those kind of things only reach a small group, and yeah, that's a little bit the problem, I think.
Hmm.
That there is a big gap. I mean, I try to bridge it, and there are a lot of my colleagues try to bridge it, but still, it's not common knowledge. It's
Yeah.
still not common knowledge how this works, how to get your rights back, what the new law. I mean, it's like over 7 years now in the Netherlands, right?
Exactly.
So it's not that new anymore. And the Garrix case has been going on since I think 2017.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And they're still, they're set about the master right part, but they're still litigating about unreasonable clauses.
Hmm.
But we had a lot of insights from that case, and wow, it's been quiet um, in that regard for years now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. For
So
about
hopefully this helps, and I think I think artists will be more aware of their master rights, and if there is a reason to claim them back, I mean, it's it should be financially attractive to do so. I mean,
yeah.
claiming your rights back where you don't have to do anything with it, it's a label's not really likely to give them away. Um, but you need to find a solution for it.
Yeah.
But in order to take the action, yeah, I think it could be beneficial in the long run to start doing something. Yeah.
And the notification towards a label could just be a simple email saying, "Hey, I feel like you don't really use your exclusive right. You have this amount of time to
Yeah, just
work
get a
on it."
reasonable term.
Yeah.
Um, if you Google a notice of default or your Dutch or whatever translation of that, then you can kind of see how the system works. A lot of people write about it, um, and yeah, if it can still be fixed, then you can send this notice of default, and if they don't act up within a reasonable term, then you could terminate the contract, whole
Okay.
or in part, if that's beneficial to you.
Hmm.
But it can also be we're really talking into like a conflict way of handling this system.
Yeah.
renegotiating your deal or seeing whether you can actually enlarge the cake and get a win-win situation,
Yeah.
that might also be a very good option to do it, because then you skip all the litigation and fighting and legal costs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And at the end of the process, you probably still like each other.
Hopefully.
And yeah, hopefully. But that's where it probably started when you signed with one of those
Yeah.
parties. Is that they liked your music and you like their capacity and capabilities.
Hmm.
And sometimes things get a little gray, dull, or dark, and maybe it's good to dust that off again.
Good point. Good point.
So fighting is, there are a lot of lawyers who are, they're going two legs straight in
Yeah.
into litigation and conflict. But I believe that a durable and some more sustainable solution is, in a lot of ways, it's a better solution to
Mm.
go for.
Yeah, I agree. Sander, I want to thank you for your time.
Yeah,
It's
more than welcome. Man.
it's been great catching up, and you definitely had some good tips here and there for the future.
Yeah,
Yeah, future. How do you call it? Like, yeah, the future artists who are listening at this point.
yeah.
And
So percentage is a part of something.
yeah,
Ask for transparency and maybe get your rights back or get a solution.
yeah, I know I have some calls to make.
Yeah.
There's
Hopefully
definitely,
that works out, and otherwise you know where to find me.
yeah, like I signed so many tracks in the past, and yeah, I never really I did read the contracts, but most of them just really didn't make any sense to me, and I just felt like, oh, those people know how it works, so I'll just trust them, and you know how it goes.
It's also a little bit learning money, learning
Yeah,
curve you pay for
it is.
progressing your career. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, but it's good to realize now how those things work, and especially for people who are listening to this, they might be in the middle of signing something, and making them aware of these things really helps. So
yeah,
thank you for that. I'll leave your like your business tags and stuff in the comments. So if people want to find out more about you, I will leave the links in the descriptions.
yeah. That's a
Um,
good idea. So maybe there's a lot of information on my website, a lot of blogs that help you, for example,
yeah,
check your own contracts.
it's all Dutch, right?
It is Dutch, but most browsers have a translate button.
Oh, true. Yeah, the Google.
So yes, so you
Yeah,
can basically translate my website and the blog in any language you want.
that's a good point. Great. Thanks for taking this time, and see you soon.
More than welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy.